I need permission.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so it's in progress. Okay, so we can get right in. So we are going to be starting off by just going over the structure and outline of the session. So we'll be beginning with our panelists' introductions and questions we have prepared for the panelists. Any questions and answers from the audience, and then an outro. So to begin with our panelist introductions, I'm going to ask all of our panelists to just say your name, your pronoun, the program and term that you're in, and then your favorite co-op experience if you have one. So anyone can start.
I'd like to go ahead. Hi, everyone. My name is Maro Austin Ibuku. I am a fourth-year planning student. And my favorite co-op experience, well, it didn't count as a co-op, but I got it through my co-op work term, was working as a facilitator at Sidewalk Labs.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, pretty nice.
I can go. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, I was going to say next, I was going to ask Eugenia to go next because she's next on my screen. I know that you weren't in the co-op program, but you are currently pursuing graduate studies. So maybe talk about your most memorable moments so far.
In my graduate studies?
Yeah, after you introduce yourself.
As I introduce. Hi, everyone. My name is Eugenia, and I am I'm in my first year of my master's studies. I'm researching using microorganisms and enzymes to break down plastic. My most memorable, that's a good question. I don't know. I think the entire experience so far has been very memorable, especially the things that I've learned. Is that an answer? Does that count? The entire experience has been memorable. It's been interesting. So that's my answer.
Okay, and Lily?
So hi, my name is Lily. I'm in my 4A term of political science with a minor in legal studies. And my favorite co-op term probably so far was my second co-op term. It was at the Treasury Board. So for the Ontario provincial government. And I think I don't know if it was my favorite in terms of the work, but it was the first time I ever worked for the government. So it was like a very big learning curve, but I think I learned a lot and it really helped me with my following co-op terms after that.
Thank you. Safia?
Hi everyone, my name is Safia, pronouns are she, her, and I'm a 4B student of biotechnology and economics through the Faculty of Science. And my favorite co-op experience, it wasn't because of the work, but it was because of the work environment. But in my second co-op term, I worked for Nissan Canada Extended Services as a business analyst. And yeah, that was probably my favorite co-op term.
And Kara?
Hi everybody, my name is Kara Douglas. I'm in my 4A term of actuarial science and finance option. I would say that my favorite co-op experience was my work term this past fall. I worked as an actuarial analyst at Aviva Canada on their large accounts pricing team. So for me, working on lots of different commercial accounts and getting to communicate with brokers and writers, that was a really exciting experience for me personally. And I also really enjoyed the work environment. So that's my most memorable.
Fatuma?
Hi everyone, my name is Fatima, or to not confuse you, Fatuma, whichever you'd like. And I'm in my final term of a health studies degree. All my co-op positions were actually at the same place, but I think I kept going back because it was such a great work environment. So it was with the city of Edmonton, working on their occupational health and employee safety team. And I was with their mental health team. So their work environment was really nice to be in.
And Sheta?
Um, my name is Cheta. I go by she, her. I'm in mechanical engineering 4B. And I think my favorite co actually, I know my favorite co was in 2019. So I worked with TierCon and I worked in the Toyota department, and we're basically working on the running board for the 2019 Highlander body set. So that was very fun. Yeah.
Okay.
You all
I
had
think
really, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just say, am I missing anyone? I don't think so.
No, I think we've covered it all, and you guys all have like really interesting experiences, and I can't wait to learn and hear more about it. So to get right into it, we'll begin with our questions. So our first question, and also by the way, you can like jump in. It doesn't have to be in any particular order. If you feel like you want to answer a question, you can go right ahead. Our first question is, can you briefly describe your experience in Waterloo regarding co-op or the grad school application process?
I could take this first. I would think if I sum it into one word, I would say stress, only because I feel like the way Waterloo works is set up, and the way for my program specifically, I can only speak to that. There aren't as many opportunities like posted through Waterloo Works compared to other programs. So there's that sense of competitiveness, like you have to fight for that job that you want if you're getting it through Waterloo Works, which is what you're coming to, what I came to Waterloo for the support of the services and the resources that they have. So it's kind of stressful to be suddenly faced with, okay, you have to get a co-op position, and there's a limited amount, and after that you're on your own sort of thing. So yeah, stressful, but also I'd say a learning experience, because it taught me a lot about just the sort of like the practical nature of making a good competitive application for a job and that sort of thing. I will say that there are good supports if you put aside the limited number of job opportunities in Waterloo Works. I will say that there are good resources on campus and stuff to help you with that sort of thing. So yeah, stressful, but also a learning experience.
Thank you. Actually, Fatuma, I did have a follow-up question, if you don't mind. So you did mention that it can be like pretty competitive because you're competing against all these people for a limited number of co-op positions. How are you able to like just stay focused on making sure that your application is able to stand out and not compare yourself to other people? Because I know it can be like very difficult, especially when you hear people like bragging and boasting about all their skills and the positions that they've held.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's really hard, especially because people talk about it and it's like, okay, I haven't found mine yet, leave me alone. I sort of just tried to, like, I couldn't control their actions and I couldn't control their lives, but I can control myself, right? And I could control the things that I wanted to put out there. So I really tried to remind myself that there's value in my experiences, even if it didn't feel like it. Like, I tried to make connections between my experiences and the skills that I've learned from them. Like, actually writing them out helped me a lot, because it helped me to believe them sort of and not doubt them so much anymore, which then helped me to feel less stressed about the competitive nature and ignore sort of the fact that other people, yes, there's a limited opportunity and there's a bunch of other people that I'm up against, but it helped me because I was able to see and prove to myself, even though I didn't really need to prove to myself, that I had the skills and I was an applicant who would be an asset to any team that I was trying to join.
That's really good. Thank you. Okay, would anyone else like to answer this question?
Yeah, actually, I'd really like to echo a lot of what Fatima is saying. I feel like a lot of us come in here very disillusioned about what co-op is. And I think that's part of, I guess, like, I don't know if it's intentional, but part of the branding of the university, right? Like, you come here because of the co-op program. And so I really thought that because it's a graduation requirement, that they kind of hand you a job. And that's very far from the truth. So if you're, starting co-op either next semester or actually by next semester you probably have already seen the ropes of Waterloo Works, but if you're starting in second year, yeah, get yourself mentally prepared because it is very, very stressful. And also in terms of like the competitiveness as well, like I'm coming from a scientific background, and luckily for me, I'm in kind of a double major. So if I don't get a lab position, I can work in an office. And a lot of science majors don't have that option. So I can't really speak to that because I quickly realized that I didn't want to work in a lab setting. So that opened up a lot of other doors for me in terms of like being able to escape some of the competition. But as much as the university does leave you high and dry in terms of like in providing information to students in an accessible way, regarding expectations and what they should expect for co-op, it does have a lot of resources. And so one of the ways that you can make your application stand out and make yourself look like a really good candidate is actually get several people to review your resume. And I don't just mean upper years and your friends and stuff, but go to the Career Service Center. And I think that for me, that was what helped me make my resume look really, really good. I went multiple times and made sure that every single time I went, there was a different person to look at it, and every time they gave me different tips. And the people who have used my advice have had success. Like people who, didn't get jobs until like the fourth round were able to get interviews in the first round. So that's a tip that I highly recommend. And another thing is once you do get chosen for an interview, one thing that I do in terms of like not comparing myself to others is not looking at who else is getting interviewed. Because I used to, especially my first co-op experience, I used to be the girl that looks up everyone on LinkedIn, trying to see, okay, what skills do they have? How do I make myself stand out? But honestly, it just psychs yourself out. And one of the mantras that I'm currently living by right now is that if you're busy trying to do what you're trying to do and focusing on your goals, you're really not worried about what anyone else is doing. And I think that like your confidence and your energy will show through in your interview. Yeah, I don't know why I'm talking a lot about what Fatima is talking about, but in terms of like my co-op experience, I think like living through that has been just really summed up how my co-op experience has been pretty positive, and I haven't, except with COVID, I haven't really struggled in the same way as other people to find jobs because I was just really diligent and like really wanted to um, really worked hard to like not have to go through those things, but at the same time I do understand that there are barriers to entry in terms of like finding jobs. Like I can't speak to the international student experience at all. Yeah.
No, thank you. That was very, very insightful. Okay. Does anyone else want to, yeah, Eugenia?
Yeah, I was going to say I can give like a graduate perspective. So typically when you're doing grad school applications, it's towards the end of the semester where you're trying to finish like your last set of requirements. And depending on how your undergraduate career has gone, you can have like a full course load or less than a full course load. And also I can only speak for like a research-based master's program, which so I've done. But typically you have to reach out to supervisors, right? Because you have to agree for someone to take you on as their grad student before you even apply to the university. So you're sending out emails to supervisors whose interests align with yours. Some of them respond to you, some don't. Those that respond to you ask for a meeting. So you have to worry about meeting with them. And I don't know about you guys, but if I have to interact with a professor or someone in a position of authority, my preference is not to, like, only when I have to do it is when I'll do it. So it can get very nerve-wracking. You're trying to hunt down your professors that you've had for reference letters. And, if you haven't been interacting with your professors, you're trying to go and sweet talk them, be like, hi, do you remember me? I got that grade that one time, or like I used to sit in the front of your class. Sometimes we don't even remember you. So it's pretty stressful, like trying to put together like a very good application. And honestly, most of the time, it's just trying to convince a supervisor that you'll be a good asset to their lab. Because once the supervisor agrees, okay, I'll take you on, you can go ahead and apply to the university. If you have the minimum like average or GPA, you're basically in. So the hard part is finding someone that will take you on. So that process it gets stressful. It's just a lot going on at the time. My experience was a bit unconventional because I had decided to take a gap year before doing grad school, but a position opened up at the lab where I did my undergraduate thesis, and my supervisor knew me. So I didn't really have to do too much convincing because I had worked with him prior. So mine was pretty straightforward, which I'm very grateful for, but I know that it gets very stressful based off of like the experience of friends that I have that are applying now. Thank you for sharing that. That really opened my eyes to the, I mean, I know yours was more of a research-based program, but that opened my eyes to what it could be. I'm trying to get cozy with some of my profs now because I expected that I would need their reference letter in the future. Yes, you will. Start buttering them up real quick.
I actually have a question about that.
Yeah.
So how are you able to, I guess, like stand out and be noticed by your profs, if that question kind of makes sense?
Yeah, honestly, sometimes it boils down to strategy. If you're trying to get the attention of a supervisor that's not in your university, when are you sending the email? If you send it towards the end of the day when they probably have a ton of emails, sometimes they don't even see it. But if you send it in the morning, then your email's at the top. And most of the time it's just getting them to read your email because you have to draft a pretty long email, basically listing your qualifications, your interest, and then that's when you really grab their attention. And when they do, they'll ask for your CV and for your transcript and then reference letters. But I think honestly, the very first step is getting them to read your email. And if it's a really good email and they see you as a good fit, they will ask to meet. So at the very first level, standing out comes from how well you draft that email, honestly. Yeah, and when you send it, also very important. You don't want to get lost.
That's a very good strategy.
Yeah.
All right, so did anyone else want to answer this question or?
Yeah, I was hoping to just say like a brief thing. From what I've heard from Eugenia about the grad school process, it sounds a lot like you're, marketing yourself and selling your best skills, making sure that professors and graduate schools can really see the value you provide and incentivizing them to take you on. And that's pretty similar to the co-op program, at least in my experience. Like, you have to really tailor all of your experiences, academic, professional, volunteering, especially volunteering in my experience, has been crucial to helping me feel more comfortable in these professional spaces, get more familiar with people with more experience than myself so that I can ask them more questions and get a more extensive understanding of what my future responsibilities might be like. So really selling yourself and making the most of your volunteer experiences goes a long way.
That's a good tip. Okay.
So what do you wish you knew in your first year that you have learned from your combined experience as either an upper year or grad student, or you've learned from your co-op experience?
I'll answer this question first. So it was kind of touched on earlier in the first question, but one thing that I wish I knew was just how much work it was being in co-op. Like whenever I'm on a study term before a work term, it feels like I'm taking a whole nother course just by having to do applications, having to do interviews. So just getting an idea beforehand of just how much would we have expected of me, I think that would have definitely helped, because when it came to seeking help, I think I started later rather than earlier, and that would have made a difference in my first terms when I was looking for a job. So like Safia mentioned, the Center for Career Action, they're really helpful in helping you improve your resume and interview skills. After doing a million resume critiques and more interviews, even just with friends or persons in my class, I improved significantly. And I think starting as early as possible definitely made a huge difference. Also, something that I wish I knew earlier was the importance of networking. Once I started working in like my different co-op roles, I heard a lot about how people just got their job through a friend who was already working there. And I never really networked before. I was pretty shy. So that's something that I wasn't really comfortable doing, but I realized just how important it is. So after realizing that, and especially in first year when I struggled with getting a job, like my next term, I went to every employer session, every single one, just trying to get my foot in the door that way, because once you're in first year, you don't have much to offer really. Like, you don't have much work experience. You may have like an extracurricular here or there, but you have to do something else. Like my resume, I didn't have much to work with, so it wasn't that great. So being able to meet them in person, face to face, so that there's something that they'll remember about you, that you're able to have other conversations, show like a bit of your personality, and just showing that initiative is something that made a huge difference. Because actually taking the time, because they're usually late at night, and just the fact that you're there, it already means something to them. So just those little extra things that you can do, it really helps to show more of who you are, and makes it a little easier to make connections. So those are something that I found, like after doing those, after struggling initially, I'm in a position where I'm comfortable and able to easily, get interviews, get jobs, and I'm now in a place where I can help others, like after having that experience.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
Yeah, I also want to answer that. So I think the first thing for me will be, at the end of the day, everything will be okay. Like everything will be good. Like, as in, because I used to, oh my gosh, I used to panic about every single thing, grades, co-op, extra, whatever. Because like at the end of the day, like you got into Waterloo because you're smart. Everyone knows that. But like you also have to like set yourself apart. So like you also have to like pick up all these extra things, get like people to notice you. Another thing that like I really wish I knew is like your social skills. I am a very shy person, but like once it comes to like co-op or school, like there's no space for that. Like there's really no space for that. Like you really have to push yourself out of your comfort zone, get involved in like, even before like co-op, get involved in like all these clubs to like at least practice talking to people that you've never spoken to before. Like just all these little things, and do not compare yourself to anyone else, because everyone is different. Everyone has their own whatever. So like just focus on what you can control and everything will be okay. That's the most important thing. Everything will be okay.
I wanted to add to that, like that idea that everything is going to be okay. I really wish that like I internalized that more in first year, or like my first co-op term, like, or applying for my first co-op term, because anytime like that I got like a rejection or didn't get a job till continuous, I was so stressed all the time, and just like not getting interviews can be really discouraging and makes you question yourself, like, like how my own value of like of what I'm doing. So I think, yeah, making sure to know that you're going to be okay, to sort of have a mentality that to bounce back, that you're going to have some rejections and that's okay, it's normal, but to not let that drag you down too much, and not to be too hard on yourself. Another thing too that I wish I would have known in my first sort of round of going through co-op is that everything counts. I think when I started in first year, I didn't have a whole lot of work experience, and especially being in arts too, like there weren't like so many jobs like that I thought there were going to be, and I just really didn't know how to take the skills and experience. And I know Maro even mentioned like volunteer experience. Like I definitely didn't use the experiences I had and explain them well enough, because there's a lot of value in even the smallest little things that you do. So making sure to count everything and finding ways to talk about yourself in a way that highlights your values, and even the smallest things do matter.
I really like the fact that you and Shetta shed light on the fact that everything's gonna be okay. I think it's really easy to get caught up like in your current like circumstance and in the present and think that because things might not be going how you want it at the time, like you may not be getting a response or like the connecting with the jobs that you really want. It's really easy to think like that's just how it's gonna be for the rest of like the time forward. So yeah, that was something that I really took with me, and I hope that a lot of people find that encouraging as well. So did anyone else want to answer this question?
Yeah, can I add a point like with regards to networking from a graduate perspective? Like one thing that I wish I knew was the importance of networking. By networking, I mean interacting with your profs, because honestly, it's scary, it's very intimidating, and that's something that we all shy away from. But the reality is, in the future, you'll be asking these same people for reference letters, or you'll be applying to be in their labs. So it's better to start building the connection now. For example, I did a like undergraduate thesis project called 419 or 499, sorry. I'm sure there are other equivalents in different faculties, but in science it's 499. And it's supposed to mimic what the grad school application process is like, to give you a taste of what research is. And so it's the same process. You reach out to supervisors whose interests align with yours, and you're like, hey, this is what I want to do. Can you take me on as a 499 student? And then you do research for a year. So for like your final year. And so I did mine with my current supervisor. And so by doing this, I was able to interact with him. Like we'd have conversations. I was able to share a bit more about like my future interests and like what I want to do. I want to go to grad school. And so when a spot opened up in his lab, who does he go to? Eugenia, because he's worked with me. And he knows the kind of person that I'm like. Because the thing is, like, when positions open up in their labs, they'll most likely reach out first to people that they know and they believe are competent. They won't waste resources trying to look, not waste, but they won't want to spend resources trying to look broadly. So yeah, I would say, honestly, network with faculty members, because you will need them for reference letters or to take you on as a student. So that's that one thing that I definitely wish I knew. So like last minute trying to scramble for reference letters, and people that don't even know you that well, they'll write you a generic letter. Oh, she was in my class, she passed. So that's not enough, you know? Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, networking is extremely valuable. It makes you a lot more familiar with your industry. It makes you a lot more confident in those spaces, especially because sometimes the first time you try to network with other professionals, it might seem like everyone's leagues ahead of you. But they're regular people just like you with the same sort of anxiety and past experiences. The fact that they're there at a later stage in their career means they fully understand how it is to first enter those spaces. So, I guess the most pertinent piece of advice I could give is, be bold, step into these spaces with confidence, ask questions, take that initiative. And even if the spaces aren't there, you can make them for yourselves. Like I remember in my first co-op term, when I was looking for jobs and, one of the works would run out, I would grab some magazines from the School of Planning to get a sense of what projects are really popular, what planning practices are really shining these days, and to get a sense of what I'd want to pursue. And these magazines would have contact information or further references and more avenues for you to explore so you get more information on possible job postings or just the projects themselves. So taking extra efforts just to know more about what you want to do and demonstrating that initiative really goes a long way.
Sorry, before we move on to the next question, I actually have a quick anecdote to just really highlight the importance of networking. And I think that would be the same thing that I would tell myself too. I think somebody said everything counts and everything is valuable. I forget who said it, but that's so true. So in my first year, after my first year, I went back to my hometown and worked as a science camp coordinator, working with like kids between the ages of like 9 and 12. And I don't know, that summer, I had the job before, but that summer it was just like really rowdy kids who just really, I didn't care about science. Like their parents just said, okay, this summer you're going to science camp. And that was just like a terrible thing for me because I couldn't do anything. But at the end, there was a little light at the end of the tunnel because one of the kids' parents actually happened to be the VP of business development at a Canadian nuclear research facility in my area. And so I wasn't even looking for a job. I was just kind of like, hi, how are you? And he's like, yeah, what are you studying? And I told him what I was studying, that's super interesting. That really merges with like the kind of co-op student I'm looking for. Um, and the kid jumps in and goes, hey, yeah, daddy, hire Sakya. She's super smart. And then like, that's how I got my first co-op job. So I think that like opportunities come from anywhere. And the other thing that I would say is like, after you do get your first job, don't burn any bridges because you never know, um, when you'll need that person again or how they can be helpful to you. And I think it's not like, when I say don't burn bridges, I don't mean like don't ghost people. I just mean like make sure you keep in contact with those individuals, especially if you like them and they liked you. I think it's important to keep those connections as well for later on. Because if you're like me, you'll be trying to apply for jobs when you graduate, and it's also another stressful time.
Safi, I actually have a question based on that. Because I often hear like make sure that you keep connections with your previous employers. I'm not gonna lie, I personally don't really know how to do that. Like, is it just like every couple months I have to say, oh hey, how are you? Like, how do you, I guess, even initiate that connection ongoing?
Yeah, it's actually quite hard because it's like sometimes you don't know where you stand with them. Like, do you actually like me? Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of awkward. And sometimes you do get ghosted, I won't lie. It's not 100% success rate. Like I've definitely been ghosted by previous employers and then they'll message me back like 8 months later saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry I missed your message," and da 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 da. But honestly, okay, for example, my last co-op job, I worked with a startup. And like, and if you know anything about startup and tech, like things are changing very quickly, and the companies that are starting up are also having to adjust to those changes of the environment. And so the company was working in the metaverse, and then Facebook had just changed to Meta. And I was like, okay, like Facebook is the first entrant into this market. That's super interesting. So I messaged my old manager and was like, hey, like, how does this affect Bunch? Like, that's a really exciting news. Da 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 da. Or if you see any like um, announcements about the company, like that's a good way to slide back in and be like, hey, I heard this news, like that's super cool. And also just like making sure that you're still connected with them on LinkedIn as well, like likes here and there, comments here and there, sending them an email every now and then, like, oh, I heard you got a new job, congrats, type of thing. Keeping them updated on your life and your projects. I hope everyone's doing well and stuff like that. um and I think that's why I said that Nissan was my favorite co-op, because I'm actually in touch personally with um a lot of the other, what's it called, like colleagues that I worked with as well. So yeah, honestly, I think like Cheta said, like there's really no space for shyness. Like you're gonna have to be the one to be bold and be like messaging people. um yeah, and it's really not that hard. Just like find a way to slide into the DMs, and if you're doing it for a bag, you're not gonna feel ashamed.
No, you're right. Thank you. Thank you. That was valuable. Okay, so on to the next question. How have you been able to increase your visibility in the workplace or attract attention to your work and what you contribute? Being Black, we are often overlooked and we have to work twice as hard as our non-Black counterparts to even be taken into consideration for a lot of opportunities. And I can imagine that once you actually are given that opportunity, then at least showing that like you deserve to be there and that your work deserves to be considered on the same level as your colleagues. Not to mention if, for example, like you're a woman, then that just adds even more depth to the intersectionality of being Black. So yeah, who would like to go ahead and answer this question?
I can.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
No, it's okay. You can go.
So I was just going to say like, okay, so I'm a Black woman in engineering. So that already is like, oh. And like, I feel like one thing that really works for me, because again, I am so shy, is like, so like I literally start my co-op and like, this may not work for everyone, but it has worked for me so far. I like find like 2 or 3 people and like just stick to them and start from there. And like with all these people, getting involved in all these things, your name comes up here and there. People like put you on, like I honestly, network skills very important because I'm but again, there is no space for that. And like also, I mean, like I don't know how to explain it. Like it's not like you should be telling everybody like everything that goes on in your life, but like I don't know, like build trust with your coworkers, that kind of thing. Like let's be like, oh, like I mean, I care if you're alive. Like we're not just like work friends, that kind of thing. So like, yeah, I feel like that has also like really helped me. And yeah, that's for me. That's for me.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I can
Oh.
add to it, unless Lily, you wanted to speak because earlier you turned your mic on.
Oh, sure. I'll just mention quickly. I think one thing, especially in my last 2 co-op terms, working in government and working in teams that have a lot of like projects like ongoing. One thing that I started to do, especially my last co-op term, was like recording all the like projects that I was on and then the work that I was actually doing. I found that super helpful just to keep track of what I was doing, but also if I wanted to reach out to my manager or to someone else in another branch, I could sort of explain like the work that I had been doing. Maybe if like I know in my co-op, my last co-op term was with the federal government working with Indigenous services. And there was one team that I really liked what they were doing. So I reached out to that team lead and sort of talked about the work that I was helping out with. And I tried to make those connections of why I could contribute to their team. So I think, yeah, being able to record your work is really good because sometimes things can get glossed over and you do want to make sure that the work that you're doing is sort of shown because like I think you have to take the initiative and like kind of advocate for yourself because a lot of times your manager, other coworkers won't like say it for you. So really being like an advocate in the workplace for yourself, I think is important.
Yeah, my point was the way that I did this. It's interesting that you bring up the being Black and being a woman in the workplace. I think in first year, like in my first co-op terms, I didn't consciously realize that I was doing this, but I think I understood that concept of knowing like that I was Black and I was a woman, and we don't take up these spaces as often, or sometimes it's harder for us to take up these spaces. So I think subconsciously I knew that was happening. So I looked for opportunities where I could prove my worth, essentially, which is bad to say kind of, but I think that's what I was doing because I worked in a team that had like multiple mini teams within them. And I also worked with people who are much older than I was. I was the youngest person on the team by far. I was like the only person under the age of 30, I would guess. And it was interesting because a lot of the work entailed using like the internet and electronics. So when I saw opportunities there, I jumped on them. I was like, I can show you that I can do this and I can teach you how to do this and I can prove that I'm able to do this and then segue that and to show you that I can do other things as well. I think as like the transition between like my first co-op term with them and my third one, which was impacted by COVID, so it was like online, it definitely they were more trusting of my abilities. And I think it might have been because I looked for those opportunities. So if you take out the subconscious factor, I think that looking for opportunities to highlight your skills helps you increase your visibility in the workplace and attract attention to your work. So look for chances where you can highlight not just to your manager, but also to your coworkers that you have a skill that maybe they don't know you have, or maybe that they wouldn't expect you to have for your role that you're in. Showcase the skills that you have in a creative way. And I think that helps attract attention to what you do.
So Lily mentioned making sure you advocate for yourself in the workplace. And I know that can be really intimidating because these are people in authority. And as Fatima said, that these are also people that are older than you. So there's that, like, trying to be respectful, but also trying to let them know of your needs. So how do you go about that, especially in regards to your like first co-op term? Because I know then was where you would be a little more intimidated, like versus now.
I can speak to that a little bit. I think having a really clear line of communication with your manager is super important. In my first co-op job, I frequently asked for feedback from my colleagues, from my manager, outside of the feedback that was required by the university, like the midterm and the final one. Like I checked up, and also like writing down everything that like was mentioned before, like writing down everything that you do is really important, not only for you to keep track of your own things that you're doing, um to keep in your resume or for your work term report, but also to tell your management, yeah, like I've been getting things done, like here's a like physical evidence of my deliverables. In my second co-op job, my manager had a different management style. I had one-on-ones once a week with her where I would basically outline all the things that I was planning to do for the week, and then there would be like I had an incentive to do them, not only because I wanted to be a good worker, or because I would have to meet up with my manager at the end of the week and show that this is what I actually got done. Um, so I think like having a detailed record of your contributions helps not only for yourself but also to let your management know exactly what you have been doing, and I think that also helps like to increase your visibility and attract attention to your work as well.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Have you experienced imposter syndrome, and if so, how have you dealt with it? And I think this ties into the fact that what Jessica spoke about in the last question, being a Black person in the workplace, also being a woman in the workplace, and also being young when you're in these co-op spaces.
I'm not sure if she's frozen for anyone else, but okay, but Fatima, are you back?
Yeah, I think I am.
Yeah, you froze a bit.
Oh,
Do you mind
okay.
just repeating what you were saying?
So I was just saying that this ties into what Jessica said in the last question, being a Black person in the workplace, being a Black woman in the workplace, also being a really like younger than most of the people you're working with. I think like a bit of imposter syndrome sometimes feels inevitable. So how have you dealt with it?
Me again. I think one thing that I know that has really helped me is like accepting that like nobody knows everything and nobody expects you to know everything. Like even like when you get into a co-op job, like yes, they're like all the interviews and like they look at your resume and everything, but like at the end of the day, they still know you're a student. Like they still know that you don't know and you don't know what you don't know. So nobody like nobody is going to fight you for asking for help. No one is going to think you're less of a person. If they do, that says more about them than you. That's not on you. You can't control like what they think. So like at the end of the day, because even to this day, I experience imposter syndrome. Like even in like my class, because like it's like everyone just has their life together, and I'm just here trying to survive. But like honestly, at the end of the day, like look at how far you've come, look at how much you've accomplished. Remember those times that you were crying because you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but like you still got it done. So like everything, and I cannot stress this enough, everything is going to be okay. Yeah.
I think for me, one thing I've realized after having worked in different professional settings is that you do arguably more work in school than in professional settings. Like, don't get me wrong, you're still probably going to spend some late nights in the office or online and have to do a lot of extensive research. But the amount of responsibilities that you're juggling in school, the pressure they put on you is a lot more intense than in work. So knowing that you can pull through this should give you some confidence that your work will value the, products that you're producing.
I think I want to contribute from the point of view of like graduate school, but I think that's something that every master's, PhD, even postdocs face. Like there are times when you feel as though you don't deserve the spot that you have or the space that you're occupying. But the reality is your supervisor selected you for a reason, right? There's nothing you could have done. It's not that they think you have a nice smile or something that's completely irrelevant to what you will be doing. They saw that you possess certain skills that they think will make you successful in that role. So always remember that. And it's easier said than done. Sometimes you get in the space, or for me, for example, like I look at the people around me, like my colleagues, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not as skilled as they are. But I also have to remind myself that I'm only a master's student, so I'm 2 semesters into my studies, whereas they are PhD students, right? They're like 2 years ahead of me. So one thing that I need to remind myself is not to make unrealistic comparisons. How can I compare my skills as a novice to someone that's a bit more of an expert? It's not very realistic. And also one thing that helps me is when the imposter syndrome sets in and I feel like, you know what, like I don't have the skills. Why am I even here? One thing that helps me is I work hard. I work hard because I try to convince myself that even if I feel like I don't have the skills, which normally I do, it's just the imposter syndrome. Even if I feel like I don't have those skills, I'm a hard worker, and that's a great asset to this team. It means I will put in the effort and I will pick up the skills that I feel like I don't have. But also there's a point at which hard work becomes toxic, or excess hard work. And what I mean is there's a point where the effort you put in won't give you as much return. For example, say you're trying to, you have an essay due tomorrow and you're running on 2 hours of sleep, but you're still going. Like at that point, you won't get lots of return for the effort you're putting in. And when you write that essay and you get your grade and it's not what you're expecting because your mind was tired, that failure will kind of confirm your imposter syndrome. So my advice is that work hard because it will help, but also remind yourself that you need to take time to rest, because there's a point where what you're putting in is, at that point, it's useless. It's not really, making too much of a difference. So yeah, that's my advice from the point of view of like grad school.
Just to add one more point, I've personally tried to sort of reframe imposter syndrome. I've been trying to reframe it as something more of more relating to like me being a lifelong learner, because I've realized that a lot of the people that I look up to, my older brothers, my mentors, like some of my peers, they are people that I look up to for a reason, right? I've seen them succeed in things and I've seen them do things. And I realized that as they've succeeded throughout their endeavors, they have taken it upon themselves to actively learn through, while pursuing their endeavors. So reaching out for help from their peers and their mentors and their networks, seeking resources to learn more about the things that they're doing. And even when they achieve things, they still try to increase their knowledge just to be better for themselves and be in a better position to do whatever it is that they're doing. So I've been trying to reframe imposter syndrome and shift it from me not knowing enough or being enough or having enough or whatever, into, okay, taking what I have and enhancing it, like just becoming a lifelong learner instead of feeling like an imposter, that sort of thing.
Those are all excellent points, and a lot to learn. A lot of this I really wish I heard from people, like from students in my first year as well. So we can move on to the next question unless anyone has something to add. Okay.
Okay, so the next question is, how do you evaluate if an opportunity, so whether that's internship, a job, a graduate program, is a right fit for you, or how are you able to determine if it will be a bad fit?
I can start talking like from a co-op perspective. I think it's interesting with co-op because you'll like apply for the jobs, you look at them on Waterloo Works, and it'll kind of show like a description, as well as, you know, like the responsibilities and what your role is. And I guess like from when I apply for jobs, I apply to like as many as I can, especially like early on, just because I didn't have a whole lot of experience and I wanted to just practice like, you know, making different kind of cover letters and things like that. So I applied very broadly, but where I really found like the time to evaluate if I thought like an opportunity was right or like a job was right for me was if I did get an interview, trying to figure out what are my goals, what do I want to achieve from this job. You know, is the team, like especially like in government as well, is the team going to be a right fit for me? Because there's different types of work environments. Are you someone who likes to work in a fast-paced environment where you're getting a lot of like kind of on-the-go projects, or are you someone that likes more stable projects where you'll kind of be working on one thing for a long time and you kind of get to see the growth of that? So I think that's how I sort of evaluated if I thought a co-op job would be right for me. So like in my second co-op term when I worked for the Treasury Board, it's a very fast moving environment. It was a lot of like last minute requests that you'd sort of work with your team on. And I found that I didn't really like that as much. I wanted to sort of like kind of be grounded in some sort of knowledge, like try and actually really like learn about one type of project and sort of become I don't know how to explain it, but just really get to know one thing. So when I applied for my next co-op term in the federal government, I found that I was working on projects that had more long-term goals. And that to me was a lot better because I liked sort of working on one thing, getting to know the people who are also working on it, like other colleagues, and really making relationships with them. So that's how I sort of evaluated if something was right for me.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say that if you are in a position where you're ready to evaluate an opportunity, I think it can be helpful to try to reflect on like your core motivations for that opportunity, right? So for the co-op, why did you decide to pursue like co-op at Waterloo? Was it for just gaining experience, or was it for gaining relevant experience? Was it for the supplemental income? Was it for the opportunity to travel? You know what I mean? I think starting by weighing your values with respect to that opportunity that are being offered to you is a good place. So for me, it was relevant experience and something aligning with my interests were like my top two priorities. So if the opportunity didn't align with those, I was like, okay, it's a lower priority one. Like I won't dedicate as much resources towards trying to obtain that one. But if you're somebody who the location of the job matters to you because you want to travel, or the pay matters to you because you want to help fund your education or fund something else, then yeah, it just goes back to weighing your own personal values and evaluating from there.
Anyone else have anything to add? Okay.
Sorry, I just have a quick thing. I think like there are a couple red flags that you should take note of, like at the interview process as well. Um, I rant about this every year, but I just don't understand what the filtration process is for selecting companies that they end up putting on Waterloo Works. Like anywho, that's a discussion for another day. But some things that I like, if you find that they're asking like you weird personal questions during the interview, or sometimes like you'll Google the company and it's like some weird warehouse like in the random middle of nowhere. So like things like that, like if you feel uncomfortable during the interview, like remember that you have power and you will end up working with this person eventually. So yeah, keep your eye out for red flags during the interview process, and even in the job description. Like sometimes I see some sort of like racist overtones in the way that they describe jobs as well. And so keep all of that in mind. Like how is the company, I think that because it's so competitive and like you need to find a job, like people are not selective, especially when you're getting closer and closer to that deadline. But you have power, and this is ultimately going to be the next 4 months of your or 8 months of your life. So be selective and care about, you know, what achieving your own goals and ultimately your safety and your mental well-being during that time as well. So keep an eye out for red flags during the interview process and job selection process as well.
Yeah, watching out for red flags during the interview process is a good one, because something I came to realize in my upper years is if during the interview they show that they don't respect your time. So if they're late and then they don't apologize for it, or you know how they expect you to have questions for the interviewer. I've been in an interview where they didn't ask me, like at the end when they were done with their questions, they were like, okay, bye. They didn't ask if I had any other questions. So that already was a red flag, because it's like they don't want to share information with me about the company or hear what my concerns are. So that's a good one. Okay, next question. So we touched on networking before. Sometimes it feels forced and awkward. Are there any networking tips you can share? How can we attract the right people that will help us realize our full potential? And this isn't just in regards to professionals or people or recruiters, but how do you also attract the right, would I say, peers, people in your program as well, people that you can go to for assignment help or just like advice?
Well, in my experience, it's easier to reach out to people than it is to wait to be, reached out to. So if there's someone that's involved in some project or is on some panel or is doing something that you feel connected to or like to explore more, shooting a quick message or email describing your experience and areas you're trying to pursue really sets a nice tone that, opens room for communication and new avenues. And when it comes to like networking in person, it feels really daunting. Like the first time I went to an event, there were like 100, maybe like 120 people in this room talking about some very complicated stuff I'd only hear out of a lecture or a guest lecture. And they were all well over like 30. There were maybe only 4 Black people in the room, including myself. It was a very tough crowd. But I made conversation with one person who, gave me a reference to someone else. And eventually you start grabbing coffees and making small talk and making conversations here and there really snowballs into something bigger. But I think it really helps to start small. You don't want to, plan to talk to 12 people in 2 hours. Maybe if you can have like one in-depth conversation about something you're passionate about, and follow up with that connection as much as you can, it goes further than just going to different places and throwing your business cards at every person there.
I want to touch on LinkedIn because I think for me personally, I feel awkward and forced messaging people on LinkedIn, especially people I don't know. Like even if we have mutual connections, I'll be like, they don't know me, I've never met them, it's weird. But I think being online sort of helps you a little bit with that, just because, there's the protection of the screen and the keyboard. So aside from that, I just try to put that feeling aside, because I'm like, this is literally a networking site made for me to do this, like it's there for you to interact with people, to learn from people. If you keep, at least for me, if I keep reminding myself this, then it made it easier. Like in the beginning, I was like, oh, this is weird. And now I'm like, I've got a standardized message that I set and then edit to to make sure that it fits the person that I'm reaching out to and why I'm reaching out to them and that sort of thing. And I really tried to like just remind myself that networking is basically just like being yourself, but like in a professional setting. Like I want to showcase my professional skills, but my resume does that, my cover letter does that, my experience showcases it. Networking is an opportunity for them to learn more about me as a person and whether I would fit into their teams. Like that's how I'm trying to think about it. And that makes it a little easier for me because then I'm like, okay, I'm just socializing, but I'm socializing professionally. So I'm maintaining, my composure, I'm using professional language, but I'm still just showing them that I'm fun to work with, that I'm a diligent person, like that sort of thing. I try to convey it in that social interaction so that it feels a little bit less forced and awkward for me personally. With respect to your point about peers, I think it's important because the people that are around you really do impact your life. Like I know there's talks of peer pressure and all that sorts of thing, but it's more just like you feed off the energy that's around you, sort of like and when I'm with people who aren't as focused on schoolwork, it makes me feel lazy, like I don't want to do schoolwork as much. When I'm with people who are studying, I'm like, oh my God, like I am lazy, get up and do work. Like these people are putting in the effort, you got to put in the effort too. So attracting people that help you realize your full potential, maybe in classes, try not to sit in areas that are talkative or that are talkative. Try to sit closer to the front and build relationships with people that you can see are focused in class and are taking notes. And you can build relationships how? By maybe asking to make a study group, or maybe asking if you can exchange notes to see if they saw something that you missed or you saw something that they missed, that sort of thing. Just creating opportunities where you can really build relationships with people that you can see are dedicated to their learning, to their betterment, that sort of thing. And not just in the setting of a classroom or work. Like if you go to the gym and you see somebody who goes consistently to the gym and they are dedicated, that displays self-discipline, you know what I mean? So looking for those opportunities to see those types of traits in people will help you to attract them and help you uplift yourself.
Well said. Anyone else have anything to add?
I think Fatuma said so many great points, and I like the word that she used, like professional socializing. I think like when I think of like networking, like I put like sort of an expectation. Like I think that's why it made me feel like nervous, like networking, is because I had this like big expectation of like what could come out of talking with someone. But I think when I thought of it more, I was like, oh, I'm just connecting with someone, talking about things that I value and being curious about other people. I think that's helped me so much. Just asking people questions. A lot of times people like to talk about their work, especially when they're really passionate about it. So I think coming at it from that lens makes it feel less forced. And in terms of like attracting people that will help you realize your potential, I think like, for example, for me, like all my co-op terms have been online. I haven't really worked in like physical office space. But one thing that I've really been doing for each one of my co-op terms is trying to connect with not only like colleagues, but like other co-op students as well. I felt like I've learned so much like from people who are like my age and like peers, like learning about what they're studying in school and their goals. And when our goals are like interests align, I feel like we share resources. And I think it's important sort of to network, not just people who are like in higher positions than you, but with people who are also like on your same path, and to like support each other that way. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
If no one else has anything to add, then we can move on to the next question. So at the beginning of this call, when we first started asking questions, I know that some of you mentioned that the co-op and the like grad experience applications, it can be very stressful, not to mention things that you have going on in your personal life, making sure you're meeting deadlines, preparing for interviews. So we just want to know, how are you able to stay grounded with the stress of it all and in the midst of it?
I think for me, I always just tell myself that it's gonna get done. And I think that I know this is like so cliche. Everyone says this, like, take it one step at a time. But that's honestly what you have to do, because I feel like if it's time wasting for you to just sit there and just contemplate on all the stuff you have to do and just like be overwhelmed by it. And I will say that sometimes you do need to do that. You do need a little bit of respite and a little bit of time to just like have it all fleshed out. But taking the time, like, don't take too much time doing that because you won't get anything done. And I think to-do lists, to-do lists, to-do lists. That's just the way to go. Yeah. Seeing all the things that you have to do in front of you, sometimes it's less daunting because sometimes it's when all the ideas are floating in your head, like it stresses you out. But seeing it in front of you, either writing it down or through Notion or whatever technical tool you like to use, that's how I stay grounded. And then obviously, taking time for myself. Always like to watch The Office. Keeps the mind off of everything else. But yeah.
I credit some very practical tools for staying grounded, like Notion, Google Calendar, to-do lists, my planner, my physical planner that I buy every year because there are so many moving parts. There's so much going on in my life that writing it down and seeing it really helps me to just be able to plan it out and not feel as stressed. Like Saf said, like taking it one step at a time. Like this way I can see what's the first step for this thing that I need to do. What's the first step for this deadline that I need to meet, that sort of thing. And then aside from the practical things, I really credit my support system, my really close friends and my family. Like they help in the sense that they give me a break when I need a break, and they push me when I need to be pushed. And I'm very blessed to have a support system that holds me accountable too. Like I found somebody in my program from first year and I stuck with her, and we hold each other accountable, which is really nice. So it helps me to stay grounded in that I have an accountability partner. I have somebody who cares about my success as much as I care about their success, that sort of thing. And yeah, and at the end of the day, self-care is very, very important. I need to remind myself sometimes on both ends of the spectrums that self-care is important and that self-care can become a form of procrastination. So it's a delicate balance between doing things to take care of yourself, but also taking the steps to fulfill the obligations that you need to fulfill in order to reach your goals. Because at the end of the day, if you don't do it, it's not going to get done. So it's good to figure out a way that you can break it down into more manageable pieces so that it does get done and that you can reap the benefits and like the rewards of all the effort and stress that you went through.
Anyone else has any tips for staying grounded and dealing with stress?
Yeah, I have one thing. So like I know like with everything, like it's hard to find like time for yourself, obviously, because like there's just so much going on. But like I feel like if you find just one hobby and like just stick to it. For me, like I like to dance. So like if I'm stressed, like I just start dancing anywhere. And I mean that works for me because like at the end of the day, like Fatima said, like it's not going to get done if you don't do it. So like you need to do the work. You just like take breaks for yourself, kind of thing. So like yeah.
To add to that, I think having a routine where you can incorporate your hobbies, your work, your relaxation, your research, breaking this thing down into different smaller pieces, having that plan, that to-do list is so helpful, especially because you're not just making work easier to do, you're encouraging that work-life balance that makes all the difference in the world. Because work is useful, it goes a long way in terms of your career, but you can't, let yourself get burnt out too quickly. Getting that work done means taking care of yourself without, procrastinating too heavily, and making sure you can still wake up comfortably the next day to do it all again, because it just keeps going. And of course, having a proper support system, friends and family that you can communicate with regularly and openly with really helps ease the pressure.
That was very well said. Did anyone else want to?
Just
Okay,
one
yeah.
last thing.
Fatima, go ahead.
Sorry. And there's not always a lot of wiggle room in these things, like your work, your studying, all that stuff. But where there is wiggle room, I really think incorporating your interests and things that you like makes the stress feel a little more worth it. So a little bit easier to handle. So if you have electives that you can take courses that you genuinely enjoy, if you have the space to do it, if you have the opportunity to apply for a job, try to apply for one that you think you'll genuinely enjoy, a graduate program, I'm not sure, but like, I think it should be the same thing. Like choose something that you would think that you could enjoy so that the stress has value behind it in your mind.
All right, thank you so much. Does anyone else want to just add anything on or answer this last question? No? Okay, we can move on. So we have reached the end of the questions that we have prepared for you, and we just want to give a huge thank you to all of our panelists for your insight and for all the advice and tips that you shared. I found it really valuable, and I'm sure that the people in our audience did as well. And yeah, so I'm super grateful for you agreeing to participate and be a part of our panel. Fatima, did you want to say anything or add on to that?
I just want to thank you guys for taking the time because obviously everyone is really busy. It's been a busy semester, especially with the switch back to in-person learning. So thank you, we appreciate that. It was great to hear about your experiences. You guys have a lot of life lessons to share. And I'm sure that our members found it really helpful.
No, go ahead.
So for the Q&A, if you're comfortable unmuting yourself, you can do that, or you could also send questions to the chat. Before then, I've been looking at the chat and I saw something interesting. I think this was when we were discussing advocating for yourself. So someone said we should talk about understanding office politics. Nathaniel, are you comfortable sharing that, elaborating on that? And as he's doing so, you guys can type your questions in the chat.
Oh, sorry, my bad. I saw what I said now. I was just trying to look for what I said. Yeah, office politics, like to be honest, like some people here, obviously I'm a co-op too. So I've worked in like both government and I worked for public, I'm working in fintech and all those kind of things. And I think one thing I really notice is people don't look at office politics a lot more. So in terms of who to really talk to about something, because like I said, I've had employees or like colleagues that I can message them and like they'll probably not reply me till the next day. And like I've had colleagues that will probably reply me in an instant. So also understanding like how things work, because in a team you're in, there's always going to be somebody that like is eager to help you, and there's always someone that just sees you as more of a student. And I think it's better for you to notice how that works. And there's somebody that maybe is just trying to impress the boss, and then there's someone that doesn't really care about their job. So honestly, understanding office politics is very important to know, to work on visibility, because I myself have used that as an opportunity to stay at some of my co-ops. Like I've worked on my two past co-ops as part-time because I knew the right people to talk to because of office politics. So things like that. So I don't mean really like gisting with them. I just mean like knowing who to talk to in particular. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing. I know we put you on the spot with that one, so thank you. So if you have any questions, you can send them to the chat, or if you're comfortable unmuting yourself, go ahead and do so. While we're waiting, I have a question of my own. So outside of UW, what other resources have you leveraged? Because the university has a lot of resources, but I think some people also find opportunities, or there are lots of lessons learned outside of campus services.
I can speak to that. I think that so I obviously shared my first co-op experience. That was from a summer like job that I had as a teen. That just by chance ended up becoming something bigger. And I think that people don't really understand the power of LinkedIn. I and I only it only clicked for me fairly recently, especially now that we're in this sort of virtual world and people are finding jobs um through LinkedIn. And
Sorry,
sorry,
Steph,
I'm
to
getting
interrupt you.
distracted because somebody's
Yeah,
submitting
someone,
content.
could you please mute yourself, whoever it is, because thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, and it's actually worked. Like people are not like just talking to talk, right? Like it's actually a real thing, and I can speak to this myself. There's a company that I've been scoping for post grad work for a really long time, and actually I shortlisted a lot of companies that I could see myself working at long term. And so I shortlisted them, and then I went through all the people who work there, and I looked at people who worked in HR specifically, and just started messaging, and the success rate is very, very low. However, if you find a recruiter or someone in HR that has that big purple band around their profile picture saying looking to hire, there's your shot. So I just messaged someone, and like literally he asked me 3 questions over LinkedIn and scheduled an interview. I didn't get it. But it was a really good learning opportunity in terms of like this actually works.
If I could add to that, I was just gonna talk about mentors. If you have the opportunity to ask somebody to be your mentor, I would definitely recommend it, just because of the plethora of knowledge that you can gain from somebody who's gone through what you are going through and is where you would like to end up, or in a position similar to where you'd like to end up. You can just gain so much from them, and they help you not just with your professional skills, like they help you in planning to get to where you would like to go. They offer support in a lot of different ways. So I really do think that leveraging mentors and is just such a great opportunity. For me personally, my older brother acts as my mentor. He's a doctor. I'd love to become a doctor one day. And he just like, I wish I'd known when I was younger the importance of listening to the knowledge of somebody who had gone before. Like if I hadn't ignored him when I was younger and hard-headed, then maybe I'd be in a little bit of a different position now. But I started listening to him before it was too late, thankfully, and I've helped myself grow as a learner, as a worker, as a person, I think. And I think it's largely due to my relationship with him. So I really do think mentoring is a great opportunity to access a resource that is helpful in a lot of different dimensions. So if you ever have that opportunity, I would definitely say go for it.
I wanted to second on that. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Fatima.
No, you go ahead. I'll just add on after. So Nathaniel had a question, so I'm just going to address it, but whenever you're done, I can go.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna mention like mentors are really important for just helping you understand where you want to go career-wise, in general. Also, external like organizations and things like that are also really helpful. So for example, for me, I'm interested in law, potentially going to law school, and there was this group called Black Future Lawyers that I found on Instagram, just scrolling through, and from that group I found so many resources about not just jobs and things, but in terms of career wise, what you can do in your undergrad to make yourself like a good applicant for law school and things like that. And from there, I found other like internships opportunities that were outside of Waterloo Works. And through there, I found a job that I arranged my own job for like my next co-op term. So I think it's really valuable to look not just at Waterloo Works, but to find external organizations that can really be about like from any sort of groups that are focused on Black students, especially, I think is important as well to look for, because they're definitely out there.
will go. So Nathaniel asked, do you think grad school is worth it? I've been thinking about it and I'm not sure if it is. It really depends on your field. Just in general, speaking broadly, grad school allows you to pick up different skills or additional skills that you probably didn't pick up from your undergraduate studies. And you can also hold positions that people that don't have that extra set of qualifications that they can't hold. And at the very least, honestly, just the networking part of the grad school is a very significant benefit. Like the people that you get to meet, they hold very important positions in companies that you will most likely be applying for. So I think, yeah, those three, just speaking generally. But when it comes to narrowing it down to the field, I'm in, my bachelor's was in biology and my master's is in microbiology. I knew there wasn't much that I could do or the type of jobs that I could do with my biology degree. It wasn't it wasn't a job that I knew I'd be content with long term or a job that would be fulfilling to me. So I knew that the grad school, I mean, I wanted to go anyways because my project is very interesting. I'm learning a lot, and knowledge is never a waste of time. Could be a waste of money because it gets expensive, but it's never a waste of time. So I knew I needed it, but I know for some fields, it depends on the field that you're in. Sometimes when you're applying for jobs, they ask for like, if you have, a master's degree, we expect you to have like a 2 years work experience. Sometimes what you lack in that degree, you can make up for in work experience, if that makes any sense. So instead of going to grad school, you can start working and build that experience, and that will kind of put you at the same level of someone that does have a master's. So it's kind of like a trade-off, but it really does depend on your field. So evaluate the type of job that you see yourself holding and figure out if grad school is necessary, if it will help you get there easier. If not, honestly, you can get a head start in industry. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so I think we have time for maybe one brief question. If anyone has, you can either just say it or say it in the chat. Otherwise, okay, yeah. So I think that's all the questions that we have. Again, thank you so much to our panelists for taking the time to be able to come and speak to us and share your insights. Thank you to our audience for being so attentive and engaging. We really hope that you guys are able to take something away from this event. And I know that we are recording, so maybe if we stop recording, if our panelists don't mind just sharing either your contact information or how some of us can connect with you in case you want to ask further questions after this, if you can just do so in the chat. Okay.